I'm Aidan Haggard here with the American Conservative Youth Union.
And I'm Laurence, the National Outreach Director of the American Conservative Youth.
Here at the ACYU, we advocate for and advance the policies of conservative students and their involvement in civics and governance here in our republic. We look forward to training the next generation of American statesmen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And also,
drink and find a seat because we're going to get the show on the road. So give it about 2 minutes and you take a seat.
Short little video Mr. Sweet is just going to put on for us, and then we'll let you show.
It's not the one I've known all my life. I've never wished to live anywhere else. This is my home, and I was privileged to be born here. Today I woke up, and as I had my morning coffee, I realized that everything is about to change. No matter how I vote, no matter what, I say something evil has invaded our nation, and our lives are never going to be the same. I've been confused by the hostility of family and friends. I look at people I've known all my life, so hate-filled that they agree with opinions they would never express as their own. I think I may have entered the twilight zone. You become a nation that has lost its collective mind. You can't justify this insanity. If a guy pretends to be a woman, you're required to pretend with him. Somehow, it's un-American for the census to count how many Americans are in America. Russians influencing our elections are bad, but illegals voting in our elections are good. It was cool for Joe Biden to blackmail the president of Ukraine, but it's an impeachable offense if Donald Trump inquires about it. 20 is too young to drink a beer, but 18 is old enough to vote. People who have never owned slaves should pay slavery reparations to people who have never been slaves. People who have never been to college pay the debts of college students who took out huge loans for their degrees. Immigrants with tuberculosis and polio are welcome, but you better be able to prove your dog is vaccinated. Irish doctors and German engineers who want to immigrate to the U.S. must go through a rigorous vetting process, but any illiterate gangbangers who jump the southern fence are welcome. $5 billion of border security is too expensive, but $1.5 trillion for free health care is not. If you cheat to get into college, you go to prison, but if you cheat to get into the country, you go to college for free. People who say there's no such thing as gender are demanding a female president. We see other countries going socialist and collapsing, but it seems like a great plan to us. Some people are held responsible for things that happened before they were born, and other people are not held responsible for what they're doing right now. Criminals are caught and released to hurt more people, but stopping them is bad because it's a violation of their rights. And pointing out all this hypocrisy somehow makes us racist. Nothing makes sense anymore. No values, no morals, and no stability. People are dying of a Chinese virus, but it's racist to refer to it as Chinese even though it began in China. We're clearly living in an upside-down world where right is wrong and wrong is right, where moral is immoral and immoral is moral, where good is evil and evil is good, where killing murderers is wrong but killing unborn babies is A-okay. Wake up, America. The great unsinkable ship, Titanic America, as it hit an iceberg, is taking on water and is sinking fast. Speak up.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're doing a lot of other things. We have a pretty packed agenda. We have some very special guests with us this evening. We're honored to have them with us. As is our custom, we would just like to make some introductions. Candidates who are here and representatives of other organizations. Representing the Trump campaign, but also managing check-in for us is our friend Mark Kudlowski, who you see out in the lobby there. Carol Upshur, State Central. I'm not going to introduce our speakers because you'll hear from them.
Just quick, and I was trying to talk to everybody before I got to run out of here. I've got a meeting that's been scheduled for a month. It's not campaign. My hunt club runs a 501c3. We take a kid who's ill and we send him to we sent a kid to Ted Nugent's ranch for hog hunting 2 years ago, and he loved it, obviously. But anyway, so I got to get to that. We're introducing our kid to the club tonight. But that aside, I wish I had more time to talk to all of you. But you can always check me out, look me up, hessforjudge.com. Some of these are back there. There's some pens and some swag and koozies and whatnot. I will be on the November ballot. It's going to be great to frame on my wall. I'm going to be on the same ballot as Donald Trump. That'll be right? So it's a tough race. It's tough being a Republican in Cuyahoga County, but you're all here. And like I always say, you're the ambassadors to those who really don't know. People call you up and say, who should I vote for? I always find it strange that people ask me that without doing their own research. But if they're willing to do it, tell them to vote for Tim Hess. So I'm asking for your vote. Say yes to Hess. Thank you very much.
Is with us.
I appreciate it. I got to find it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Where's Kenny? Running for state rep. You guys all know Kenny. You want to say hi?
Hi, everybody.
Medina Township trustee.
Tony Caliger with the Board of Elections. Tony. Where's our friend Mike DeVilla? There he is. Man, we have to return to the Ohio House. County Councilman Jack Schraub. Where's Jack? There he is. The other side is already trying to roll out a dirty campaign against the councilman. He is one of very few Republicans on the county council. He tries to work with everyone there. You'll never find anyone more diligent or fair or hardworking. Please help Jack. If you want to help him by either going door to door for him, working in your own neighborhoods, helping with ballot, chasing, or any number of things, please come up and see us after the meeting, or call me or email me anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Brecksville Mayor Kingston was with us. He may have been called away, but he is mayor. Okay, moving on. We do have some housekeeping. As you know, we do our endorsements typically in the primaries, and we did so. But a couple of folks, just for whatever reasons, were not able to come before us, and so we had some requests in the last couple of weeks for endorsements. One was from Justice Joe Dieters, who is a sitting justice on the Ohio Supreme Court and is now running for a full term. If you're watching what's going on with the issue on ballot language and other things, you know how important it is that we hold the Ohio Supreme Court. It is one of the keys to preserving, what we consider an American republic, which Ohio is a part of. The Democrats, the far left of the Democratic Party, really want that Supreme Court. So we have a slim majority right now. So please remember Justice Dieters and the others that you will see on our slate card. And Representative Max Miller has also asked for an endorsement. He cannot be with us this evening. They are in session. The House is in session. But we need to vote quickly on them. Both gentlemen.
I can't hear you in the back.
Let me try to speak louder. Both gentlemen have been scanned by the screening committee, and I can tell you Justice Dieter was highly recommended. Congressman Miller, the split between qualified and recommended. We're gonna try this again.
We're gonna shuffle them back and forth. I'll recharge you until you burn it out.
Okay, is that any better? Yeah. Thank you.
Talk fast.
So that's off it. So, I will share with you, the membership here, you can do whatever you want. I do not try to steer endorsements or not. If there's any questions or you want to have any discussion, we can do that briefly on any of these gentlemen. Otherwise, I will move that, we call for a vote on the endorsements. Does anyone have questions or comments? Feel free, that's why we're here. Mr. Bowden.
Yes, about Max Miller. Is there any explanation as why the split between qualified and recommended? And why those two
I
rates?
don't want to speak for the committee, but I think there were concerns about some of the votes related to the budget and those sorts of things. But I can tell you, everyone on the committee, I think it's fair to say, felt that they want to see him endorsed and reelected. They felt that it's important that we give President Trump a majority in the House. And then Congressmember Renacci, who is with us, who you're going to hear from shortly, is going to speak on that behalf. I wanted to see if there are any questions for us. Anyone? Yeah.
Did Daniel Down contact you for endorsement?
No, I don't know that name. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see both candidates get our endorsement, and I think it'd be unconscionable for a Republican candidate, an incumbent no less, not to have our endorsement.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now having said that, I would ask that you just hear from Congressman Renacci on Max's behalf. And Jim's going to be speaking with us a little later in the program on some other topics, but he's going to speak for Max's.
Thank you. Well, look, Max isn't able to be here tonight. He's back in Washington. One of the reasons why I left Washington is you got to go back and pass these crazy CRs, and that's what he's working on. Here's what I would ask you. I've known Max for probably 8 years. I do believe that Max Miller not only represents this district well, but he represents it the way I represent it. He has to take tough votes. And sometimes you may not like 1 vote or 2 votes, the Pfizer vote, whatever it is. By the way, I voted for the same vote he voted for. So I would ask you, he's a good man he's actually a good representative for the district, and I would ask that you give him a highly recommended recommendation as an endorsement. He is somebody who supports Trump. He's been with Trump. He's always supported me, but not only that, I think his representation is exactly what we need in Washington. So I would just ask that it be a highly recommended endorsement.
Unless there are any other questions or comments, I will move that the membership vote to endorse both Justice Peters and Representative Max Miller. Is there a second? Mr. Sweetness, thank you. Thank you, dearly. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Is it Aaron endorsed? Max? Chasey, you advise Max, and I will call Justice Peters later. Okay. Now, we are also fortunate, and thank you, to have with us this evening some very special young men from the American Conservative Youth Union. And one of our biggest challenges as Republicans is getting our youth involved. It is a real uphill battle, dealing with the schools, quite frankly, who often don't want a conservative voice on their campuses. It's difficult and challenging for a number of reasons. But we have a couple of young men with us this evening who I want you to get to know better, and we will have them again. But we wanted to at least introduce them this evening and have them speak for a few minutes about what they are doing. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Aidan Haggard and James Laurence.
I'd like to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. Let's get started.
Can you hear him? Is that what?
Lift that up a little bit, James. There you go.
Yeah, I'm sure. Feel free
Is that better? All right. So the youth have often been a big talking point for many campaigns, and polls saying, will the youth go out to vote or will they stay home? And This is specifically going to make an impact in this election, but it's not just this election, it's over the next 5, 10, and 20 years in office. Gen Z will be fully able to vote in this time frame and will be taking office in this time frame. With this, we must learn how to teach the youth, educate them. We need to be able to reach them to understand what is going on, to be able to change election results. Hello everyone, I am James Laurence. I'm a sophomore at Medina High School. I'm also the National Outreach Director at the American Conservative Youth Union. I come before you today to talk about Gen Z in this election and the world. Many people in my sphere of my friends and that I talk to at school don't like Trump for many reasons. Mainly it's his personality and how he acts, which sometimes can be a lot for some people. But there is a group that doesn't support Harris either and is stuck in between the two. But there is a small group that will support Harris unconditionally. I believe the big reason they don't like the right is because we don't have our own vision. Even with Trump as Republicans, what is our vision? Is it the exact opposite of what the left says? Or is it that God is real? That the more government, the worse government? The outrageous spending in DC is not helping anyone but some unelected bureaucrat. That sending troops overseas to fight some foreign war does nothing but cause death to sons and daughters, mothers and fathers. And that there are 3 branches of government in the US, not 4. Now, I do believe there is some framework with Agenda 47 and what came from the convention, but is putting something on a piece of paper and saying it once truly how you believe something? Or is it frontlining every single point, every single truth that you believe in and bringing that up and speaking the truth even when you aren't supposed to? In this election, we have a very unprecedented race and unprecedented year with a controlled primary on the Democratic side, a candidate swap late in the race due to a bad debate performance, and 2 assassination attempts. We have no idea. 3. When was the 3rd?
Just recently at the convention, when they found an explosive outside.
I believe the police came out and said that that was a false report.
Yeah, right.
So I'm just going with what has been stated. So we have no idea what's going to happen in the next couple of days. If there is possibly another attempt, if, let's say we have another debate and Harris performs badly, they try to swap her out, we have no idea what's going to happen. A thing that has also been unprecedented is the college campus protest involving the Israel-Gaza war. About a week after the October 7th attacks on Israel, college kids started protesting the funding of Israel. This continued to escalate, leading to encampments and protests, and some of those getting very violent. These events revealed that some kids supported terrorist groups. That's a problem, that anybody supports a terrorist group, let alone the future of America. All of Gen Z will be fully able to vote in a couple years and is often seen as the progressive generation. While this may be true, those are only the voices you hear. You never hear young conservatives, and that is because they are scared to step out and say something. This is for many reasons, but the main reason is that they are unsure what to think. Right now, it is popular to be on the left and support all the different ideas that the Democratic Party puts forward. These youth aren't sure what to think and have a hole in their heart. These youth are missing purpose. And that is why you see suicide rates, depression, and anxiety skyrocketing right now. And what is missing in the youth? What is missing is God. When there is a hole in your heart the size of God, and God doesn't fill it, something else will. The issues with the youth is that other things are filling these holes. So now that we've understood a little bit of what this issue is, we need to be able to understand why this is happening and what fills that hole to truly be able to solve the issue. The thing that is replacing God are new religions in the world, what some may call the isms. These are Zelenskyism, climatism, wokeism, transgenderism, interventionalism, and COVIDism. The youth don't feel like they belong or have a purpose, so they let these new religions come into their heart and guide them and give them a purpose. But all that does is ruin the soul of a person. Why do they go to the left? Because the left gives them a vision. That is why the youth leaves us as Republicans. The left gives a vision, sells the vision, and says, come join us. We don't do that as Republicans. If you want to see the youth electorate change, which I believe we all do, start interacting with them. Find out how they feel on different issues. If you want to see the youth electorate change, understand that on some topics, they might know a little bit more than you. If you want to see the youth electorate change, give them your vision while explaining the reason behind your vision. This might be a bit of a controversial topic, but the things that we need to do to change the electorate, Trump and the Republican leadership don't do. They sit back and attack the person for something they can't change and expect to win, and when they don't, they just complain. That is why we have a failed red wave in 2018, and that is why if we don't change something, I believe that Trump will lose this presidency, the House will flip, and potentially the Senate could be tied with the Democratic VP, which would result in ultra-progressive policies. Now, with the advisors Trump has gained of RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Vivek Ramaswamy, he has gotten better on this, but it's not where it should be. These issues that affect us nationally affect all of us, but that starts at the local levels, with grassroots movements making change. It is time for county parties, state parties, and leaderships of groups to support grassroots movements at the local levels in all they do. Be open to new ideas and different ways of putting people in office, but not just putting them in office, but educating voters on who is in office locally and at the county level. This is how you truly give people a vision. But it doesn't just stop with those advisors and other elected officials. It's up to my generation, the next movement where I think we can see a red wave, but not some crony capitalist right-wing state. It should be a true libertarian conservatism red wave. So please do not abandon the youth just because they might lean a little bit more left, or that they're involved in anti-progressive movements. Mentor the youth, educate them on issues, and let them find the information that they need. Don't force them to believe certain things. Don't mandate what they can and can't say, and pray for the ones that do have that hole in their heart. That is the biggest way that you can make an impact in changing the youth electorate. Another thing, actively listen to engage in questioning about what leads the youth to believe these ideas. Why do they believe this? Why do they believe this? And I believe with the youth stepping up through the older generation's guidance and a new youth leader once Trump serves his term in the Republican Party, we can truly elect common sense individuals who don't just talk, but actually act, who lay out a vision with steps. I want to thank you for listening to me discuss the youth. Now, I would like to pass it on to Aidan Haggard, our president and founder of the American Conservative Youth Union, to address what we do in the union and how we make a difference.
But Steve, I want to make sure you guys can hear me. Steve, the Cuyahoga Valley Republicans, James, Secretary LaRose, Chairman Renacci, it is with great pride and satisfaction that I speak before you today. That I speak before you today is a byproduct of the modern political youth. There are not many like me, but those who are like me and those who are party to it, benefited by it, and accustomed from it, understand the necessity of the youth's involvements in our civics and governance processes. Today we witness the start of a new era, the new electorate. An electorate no longer privy to the political process and the pundits that run it, no longer kept in the dark of the political arena, and with whom the future of every election must be held. This new generation of statesmen must be matriculated into our republic with a fine understanding of what it means to be an active player in our civics and governance process. It is thus the goal of men like James, John, and I to make good of these fine men and women who shall be the future of our republic that we hold and cherish so greatly. It is for this reason that I hope and seek to show you today the great works and strides of the American Conservative Youth Union, so that you can see what we have done, what we can continue to do, and what will be resulted of it. We have, for the last half of a decade, made a true attempt of shaping the next generation of American statesmen. Many students today have chosen the peaceful life compared to their forefathers, but if these students seek to live in a quiet, peaceful, uneventful life, I'm sorry they're living in the wrong era. The idea of being a silent majority has been around so long it is basically dead. dead long enough to be great in the books. We no longer have the ability to be silent in our majority, for in silence we find death. The youth today find themselves at a crossroad, helpless in their guidance as to which path to take. Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. And many there be which go in thereat. Because straight is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few be that find it. The ideas of the world are quick to surround the minds and hearts of our youth, and these people are being taken over by it. But we have a Creator who cares and watches over us. The ideas of these worlds must not take over the minds and hearts of our American youth. And contrary to our identity, the left seeks to divide us from creation unto death, making men divisive as he could be. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equally. It is in our creation we are endowed with equality, not an equality of outcome, not an equality of anything but our creation. The modern left, as well as the Harris ticket, seeks to tout the ideology that we should all be equal in the outcome, no matter of how much work we put into our labors and our toils. Verily I say unto you, the American youth no longer believe the lies spouted by the Harris campaign. The American youth knows these things. The press sees them, yet they act not against them. Since our founding in 2019, the American Conservative Youth Union has fought for liberties and freedoms of the American youth, who are the future of our republic. To lay a foundation of freedom is to ensure the continuity of that future, allowing all of our freedom-loving and deserving individuals to be free with their rights given to them by God. The rights of all men truly are given to us by God, and they are constantly at odds by those who do not understand or challenge the concepts of our constitutional republic. Have not the silencing of students' free speech in the public schools. Have not the lack of integrity in public offices. Have not the neglect of the American principles. Have not those who renounce constitutional ideas given to us by God seek and move all freedom-loving Americans to act. The American people know these things. The press sees them, and yet they act not. Have not the school's administrators and employees, in their capacity as a public servant, taught students of our great nation to renounce American principles and the foundation upon which it rests on? Can we do nothing? Nothing? We brave men and women of the United States must raise our voices and our votes to ensure that our elected officials are subservient only to the U.S. Constitution and the American people. We must teach our liberty-deserving children to make sure that they have the support to understand freedoms, free speech, and the rights given to everybody at God. We, the American Conservative Youth Union, fight for and advocate for a next generation of electorate. We fight for the rights of students and ensure that students are getting involved in civics and governance, and not just politics. Not just a cultural war, but they're running for elections. Everybody quickly today says, we have these issues, we have that issues, but we must advance and find a purpose for these youth to fill those issues. We hope that you realize that we work hard for the American youth. We have members, and I encourage you to come up here later. You can see our outreach division in our map. We have members all across the world. California, we have several members despite being the most liberal state here. We have members in Georgia. We have members in, and of course, Ohio, many chapters around here, and Texas, all across the United States. Members who simply want to have a better republic. And so I want to say thank you so much for being here. And if you believe that there is a possibility for a new future that allows the American youth to be brought up by our wonderful generation before us, then I would encourage that you talk to us afterwards. See what you can do to help us and what we can do to help you. So I want to say thank you so much for having us. We hope that you enjoyed our speaking. James, thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Right over winter break or so, and I got to know him more, and we started to understand what his goals are, and he's gone so much farther. He's become a wonderful public speaker, and I believe firmly that he is going to be, once again, a part of that next generation of American statesmen. And so I want to say, James, thank you so much for all the hard work you do, and I hope we can get a round of applause for James and everything that he does for the American youth.
That's the kind of enthusiasm we need, folks, as you all in this team. Moving on, We are also fortunate to have with us this evening our former Congressman, Jim Renacci, Medina County Chair of the Medina GOP. And whenever you're ready, Congressman.
Thank you again, and thank you all for having me. It's one of those places I love to come back to. I see so many friends, and like I said, you've always been so supportive of me. So some people always ask me, so what have you been doing? You've been, you left politics, you ended up running in 2022. What have you been doing since then? And what people don't realize is Jim Renacci continues to fight, and he continues to fight for all the right things. So I think it's important that you're aware that I'm not one of those people that runs. And by the way, I ran in 2 races against incumbents. Anybody that understands that knows incumbents win 97% of the time. So if you're going to defeat an incumbent, it's not easy. It happens every once in a while, about 3%. But I ran because of issues. I ran because of concerns. I mean, the best example I'll give you tonight is I ran because I thought in 2019 when Governor Laurence said he was going to let Haitians come to Ohio, I said it was the worst idea he ever could have. And now look at what happened 6 years later. So these are the kind of reasons people should run. It's the reason I ran, and it's the reason I'm going to keep fighting. So what am I fighting about? What have I been doing? Well, first off, I've been traveling the state on a couple things. Number one, closing the primaries. I don't know how many of you have heard about closing the primaries, but today we have crossover voting. Everybody needs to realize that. You're not a Republican, you're not a Democrat, and you go to the voting booth, then you can become whatever you want to be. You can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat, you can be an independent. Who ever heard of that? I mean, you're either a Republican, you're either a Democrat, or you're either an independent, but our state allows you to make the decision on primary day. I've been fighting this ever since 2022 because I still believe, and I have the statistics to show it, that over 200 in 2022 when I ran, over 230,000 Democrats crossed over and voted for somebody. I don't know who they voted for. I don't know who they voted for, but they crossed over and voted for somebody. And we need to stop that. The other party should not make decisions for the party that's running. And I use this example. If you're a Cleveland Browns fan, do you want the Steelers deciding who your draft choice is? I mean, think about it. The answer is no. You should not want crossover voting. Now, there are 2 bills out there that I've been pushing for. There's House Bill 208, House Bill 210. Is this thing working?
Steve it down again.
You went too long, Joe.
Oh, somebody doesn't like what I'm saying. All right, House Bill 208, House Bill 210, and there's also Senate Bill 147. I'm just telling you they're out there. My biggest concern right now is we have a dysfunctional House and Senate in the state of Ohio. You're all aware of that. Very little is getting accomplished, but I know those bills are there. They're probably going to have to be refiled next year, but I'm asking you to remember that. As Republicans, you should only want Republicans to vote in your primary, and Democrats should only want Democrats, and we shouldn't have crossovers. There's multiple states that do this. Florida's one of them. You know who has the strongest Republican registration? One of the strongest Republican registrations in the country is Florida. And you know how they got that? Closing the primary. It forces you to have to get and decide who you're going to be. Nobody becomes a Republican on election day, primary election day. Nobody becomes a Democrat. You know what you are before you go there. These bills make you register in advance one time. If you're a Republican now, you stay a Republican. If you're a Democrat now, you stay a Democrat. But if you want to switch, you got to register in advance. You can't do it on that day. So keep that in mind. We're going to worry about that next year because they're going to have to be refiled. Second thing I want to talk about is issue 1. Now, everybody here will tell you, well, I don't support issue 1, right? Nobody supports issue 1 here, right? Right. I bet you nobody really understands what issue 1's all about, and that's the problem. So today, we have 40% of the voters in the state of Ohio, 40% of people that have cast the vote do not know what issue 1's about. 40%, that's a big number. That's going to change. And right now, the 60% are leaning to support issue 1. All right, we do not want issue 1 passed. Think about this. Today, we may not like gerrymandering. And everybody in this room may say, I don't like gerrymandering. And by the way, everybody in this room probably likes the idea of citizens, not politicians, deciding things. No, you don't want to vote for that. You don't want to support that. That's what issue 1, that's what the left is going to say. Issue 1 is about citizens, not politicians. That's what they're going to say. It's a great punchline. The 40% who don't know what issue 1's about right now, they're going to love that line. And they're going to say, I support that. Because most people would support that. But here's what you should support. Look, I've been on a number of panels over the last 6 years about gerrymandering. And let's face it, everybody gets, whether you have a 7-member elected group, which we have right now, the current system is we have 3 people, we have 7 members, we have the governor, the auditor, the secretary of state, we have appointment, the Senate president appoints 2 people, the House appoints 2 people, those 7 members make the decision. Today we have, the minority in the House and the minority in the Senate. So you have 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats. Now I would tell you, 20 years ago it was reversed, when Democrats controlled everything and they gerrymandered the way they wanted to. They just don't like what we're doing now. But here's the answer to that. If you don't like this, I've said all along, if you don't like the way the gerrymandering was done, today you at least have a voice, and you could fire the people that you voted for, you elected, because these are all elected officials on the commission. What issue 1 does is it changes that. It gets 4 judges appointed, retired, to come up with a panel of 15 people who will then make the decisions of how the districts are drawn. And here's what they're going to do. They're going to go out and get a computer. They're going to pay for consultants. They're going to do everything the elected officials are going to do. And then we're going to say, well, it's better than elected officials. No, it's not. No, it's not. At least when it's elected officials, you can say, I don't like what you did, and I'm going to fire you. Now, if you don't like that, here's what I propose. I propose not voting for issue 1. Vote no. But here's what we should do. And I was just on Channel 5 News earlier today. We all know we're going to get a computer system to draw it. So why don't we keep politics out and have the computer system draw it? Why don't we have an ability to elect people who will sit on a commission that will design a computer model to make the system work, so we can fire those people if we don't like what they're doing. If you vote for issue 1, you now are setting up a completely new bureaucracy. How many people in this room like bureaucracies? I guarantee you nobody's going to put their hand up. If you do, you're probably in the wrong room. Nobody likes bureaucracies. But why would you vote to set up a whole new bureaucracy that is paid? You pay this group, they get consultants, they're going to get computer programs, they're going to do everything, and it's going to cost you more money. And then, when you don't like what they're doing, you can't fire them. You can't fire them. I'm telling you, make sure you tell people, because the 40% aren't sitting in this room. The 40% who don't understand what issue 1 is are not sitting in this room. They're out there. We know they're the people that are going to vote. They're going to show up. They don't even know what's good. I got to tell you a funny story. This is part of the 40%. I was at a dinner in Cleveland. Somebody said to me, hey, what do you think about this Sheriff Brown race? I go, well, what do you want me to think about it? And they go, well, he's probably going to win because I don't even know who he's running against. I said, what? This was like 2 weeks ago. You don't know who's running against Sheriff Brown? And they said, no. I said, where do you live? I mean, seriously. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's another problem. In 2018, I lost because Republicans knew who I was, everybody in this room. Democrats knew who Sheriff Brown was. But we did an exit poll after the election. Only 40% of independents knew who Jim Renacci was. Well, guess what today? Only about 40% of independents know who Bernie Moreno is. And now he's getting on TV, but I'm gonna tell you, this is the same as issue 1. When 40% don't know what's going on and they go in and vote, who do you think they vote for? They're gonna say, wait a minute, citizens, not politicians. I like that, I'm gonna vote for it. They're uninformed, they don't know what's really issue 1's all about. You need to tell them. You need to tell your neighbors, your brothers, your sisters, everybody. Make sure they understand. Here's the simplest way. Issue 1 sets up another bureaucracy. It costs the state money. It gives you no ability to fire the people when you don't like them. That right there is the perfect, simple solution as to why you shouldn't support issue 1. You can have all kinds of other reasons. That's the simplest one. Next thing I want to talk to you is Supreme Court races. Nobody wants to talk about Supreme. I got to tell you, this is amazing, and it happens every time we have Supreme Court races. I ran in 2018. I ran with two Republican Supreme Court individuals in 2018. Nobody, at that time, I'll admit it, I was complaining. Because on all the slate cards, DeWine, Husted, nothing about Renacci and nothing about the Supreme Court races. And guess what happened? DeWine and Husted won because they were at the top, but our Renacci lost, and our 2 Republican Supreme Court members lost. We failed to get them elected in 2018. Then 2020 shows up, and the same thing happens. We neglect, and we lose another Supreme Court member. In 1995, I was in the business world. I fought and paid. I was so worried because the Supreme Court was controlled by Democrats. I was so concerned of the decisions they were making that I was one of the people that was writing checks to make sure that we got the Supreme Court. By the way, at that time, it was a majority Democrats. We got all 7 Republicans in the Supreme Court. Today, because we're not paying attention, we now have 4 Republicans and 3 Democrats. If we lose one, we lose control. The 2 most, I know you probably don't believe this, but you know what the 2 most important elections are? 2 most important elections you got to pay attention to on November 5th are issue 1 and the Supreme Courts. If we lose issue 1, our state will never look the same. We'll have a House of Representatives or congressional districts. Instead of having a majority of Republicans, we'll probably be 8 Republicans, 7 Democrats. It's going to change that much. And if we lose the Supreme Court, there's going to be no defense to able to help us. Now, I'm not going to quiz you, but in smaller groups I always say, I want somebody to stand up and tell me who our 3 Republican Supreme Court members are. I was just in a group down in Westerville, or I forget where it's at. Anyway, I asked them, can anybody stand up and tell me who are 3 Republican Supreme Court members? I can tell you that only one person in a room this size knew who are 3 Republican Supreme Court members. Now, it's going to be a little easier this year because there's going to be R buy-in and a D buy-in. But let me tell you the most dangerous thing about that. And here's what we have to understand. You're going to see an onslaught of commercials. I just learned this today. You're going to see an onslaught of commercials coming out saying Republicans don't want to protect women's rights. Republicans do not want to allow abortions. Republicans this. They're going to be going after Republicans. That's their game plan. And that's why you're going to see margins tighten up. We also have an issue 1 that I told you, which they're all going to come out for. The left and Democrats are all coming out for issue 1. So think about what that means. You got the left who's going to support issue 1. You've got this narrative. It's already started. There's a commercial today against Bernie Moreno saying Bernie wants to take away your rights as a woman, blah, blah, blah. That just came out today. It's going to come out. It's going to be a big issue in the next few weeks. That's going to drive the Democrats. Now remember, we lost issue 1 last year. We lost issue 1 on the abortion issue. We're going to have the same problem this year. You're going to see shrinking amounts of winning margins. And anybody that thinks that Donald Trump's going to win by 10 points or more this year, I got a little side bet for it. I actually think that margin's going to tighten up too. Because people are going to come out and they're going to say, R's taking away my rights and am I right for an abortion, and you're gonna see things tighten up. We have to make sure that we are working really hard to make sure we get these Supreme Court. Now, I'm gonna tell you, right now, you have Shanahan, you have Dieters, and you have Huckles. Those are your three Republicans. You don't see any signs out there, because they don't have the money to put the signs out. You don't see any commercials, you don't see anything. You are gonna see an R and a D after them. The biggest problem we're gonna have in this state is the R and the D, whether we like it or not. Because we're not whether you think we're a Republican state, and our Secretary of State could probably confirm this, I think it's 67% of our electorate is independents. It's independents. And so our Republicans and Democrats are really a small margin. Those independents are the ones who are going to make the decision. And in the end, they're going to make the decision based on something they hear. Let's talk about the presidential race too in total, and then I'm done. Presidential race, believe it or not, Trump's going to win Ohio. I think his margin's going to tighten up. He's going to win Ohio. But let's face it, this presidential race is going to come down to a very small amount of people. 46, 8%. It's 8% that are going to make the decision. He's going to win Ohio. But let's face it, he's got to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. He's got to worry about Arizona. He's got to worry about Georgia. He's got to worry about Nevada. Those 6 states will make the decision on election day. Keep that in mind as well. But in leaving, please, 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 issue 1. Make sure you get out and tell people the bureaucracy we don't need. And the Supreme Court races, please. You're going to know because of the R, but I think you need to know the name and tell people the names. Don't tell them the R's and the D's. Make sure you know the names. Let's get them elected as well. Thank you. I think there's one question back.
Hey, Joe, I read where the three Supreme Court candidates did not participate in the large newspaper editorial endorsement meeting. I find that discouraging that they didn't want to participate and get at least a viewpoint out of the names of the papers and articles.
Again, I'm not running their campaigns. I think they should have. Anytime you have a chance to get any media, you should do it. I do think the Supreme Court races are running on limited money, not the big dollars. They're doing the best they can, but they're going to need our help.
Yeah, just a comment. Excuse me. So yesterday we were talking before about abortion. We'd be seeing a lot more about it now. Reason being is President Trump had come out and said that we're going to support in vitro fertilization and having it paid for. The United States Senate, the Republicans shot it down yesterday. So even after President Trump made this an important thing to try to get rid of this abortion thing, which is going to kill us, the Republicans in the Senate, only 2 of them voted for it. So they have a whole new set of ammunition to use against us again now. And why in God's name they did that is beyond me. That was stupid. That was stupid.
Well, look, the Democrats have a winning way now. It's the abortion issue in Ohio. They're going to use it. Be prepared for it. Make sure people understand these Supreme Court justices are better, they're more qualified, all of those things. Get that issue. Don't start debating that issue. Don't start debating. If you're debating and defending, you're losing. Just, if you have a chance to talk to somebody, just pivot away and say, we need to maintain a Republican majority so businesses, so issues continue to prosper and go in the right direction in the future. That's the simple answer. Thank you.
Just some housekeeping again. Remember, you can still register to vote. We're trying to get folks to vote by mail, to get voting out early, to bank your vote for Republicans. If you need a voter registration form for yourself, a family, friend, or friend, we have them. If you need a request for mail-in ballot, please put your hands up and Steve or Kevin will bring them out to you if anybody needs. If you're shy, just come up to the table afterwards. As the congressman indicated, this is going to be a hard-fought race. This race is just going to be critical to to our country. I was recently privileged to be at an event with Bernie and Senator Marco Rubio, and you may have heard this already, but with increasing frequency, Chuck Schumer is telling colleagues that if they keep the Senate, they will do away with the filibuster. And ladies and gentlemen, if we lose the filibuster, we may lose the Republic. So please do everything you can to help these candidates, to stand behind Secretary LaRose. Help our organization. We're not talking about the things we're doing, but this group is doing a lot of things behind the scenes. You're going to see advertising coming out in local magazines and newspapers. You're going to see billboards. You're going to see flyers and other things. If you can help us. We're not about money, but unfortunately today it takes money to do some of the things we do even as volunteers. We are a 501c3. We're a nonprofit corporation in the state of Ohio. If you can help us with whatever you can do, and if you want to volunteer, that's even more important. Reach out to us. I'd like to introduce Secretary LaRose, but again, I want to make just a few quick introductory comments and explanation. Steve, can we put up on the screen the
Yeah, raise your hand if you either want a registration or an absentee ballot request. Kevin will get one too.
Okay, can we put up, on the ballot summary so the Secretary can hear? While Steve is doing that, again, as Congressman indicated, even amongst Republicans, people are not real familiar with issue one, but this is really a do or die kind of situation. And I hope that all of you here recognize what Secretary LaRose has done by taking on this issue. I'll let him explain it. I don't want to steal his thunder, but this is really just a huge moment. And I want us to recognize, I hope you do, that while we often hear laments about where are our Republican leaders, why aren't they out being the face of the party, being the face of issues that we stand for? We have a gentleman here with us this evening that did that on the first issue one, regarding the 60% vote to change the Constitution, on the second issue one, and now here we are again on one more. And this man has been taking abuse like you wouldn't believe in the news media, on social media, on television, for what he has done, and I think we owe him some appreciation. I want to end with this. This is a little corny, I understand, but I'm going to ask you to bear with me. Today, Mr. Secretary, I was thinking of you in this meeting, and like many of you here, I've always been a big Ronald Reagan, and I was reminded of one of his quotes that's lesser known, and it reads like this. He says, "It is time for us to realize in our current crisis that we still are too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We are not, as some would have us believe, doomed to an inevitable decline as a nation or as a people. I do not believe in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. It is at times like these that with all the creative energy at our command, we must renew our determination, our courage, our strength, and our faith. We should remind ourselves that as a people, we have every right to dream heroic dreams for ourselves and our children. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes just don't know where to look." Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Secretary of State Frank LaRose.
Tom, you didn't just call me a hero, did you?
Yes, I did.
No, stop that. Listen, I served with some. I know what heroism looks like. We're going to pass those out in a minute. Good evening, everybody. And that quote from Reagan is inspiring, though, because when you hear what it starts with, it's that idea that we don't have to accept that we're a nation in decline. Many of you have heard me talk about this before, but each American generation has left this country stronger than they found it. From the very first generation up through the present, we're in jeopardy of being the first generation in history to leave this country weaker than we found it. I, for one, will be damned if that happens on my watch, and I know that you feel the same way. So we need to elect a man that's cool under fire. Shouldn't have to be, but he is, right? We saw that. President Trump had it together, had the presence of mind to turn to that crowd and say, fight, 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 right? He didn't say, get me the hell out of here. He said, hold on, to his detail. And he said, these guys need to see that I'm okay. And he told them to fight. We know that he picked a great running mate in Ohio's own J.D. Vance, and we need to put those two guys in the White House. That's going to be pretty exciting. We need to finally retire the national embarrassment called Sherrod Brown. And we know Bernie's got a hell of a fight on his hands, and he's going to do it. Trust me, you don't know what somebody's got until you go a couple rounds with him. Bernie's a friend. He always has been. He was an opponent earlier this year. I'm so proud to support him, and we all got to help. We got to win those state Supreme Court races, our congressional races, the state legislative races. You know how important all that is. I'm here to talk about what I do as your chief elections officer. I'm here to talk about why it matters that you've elected a conservative Republican Secretary of State and how that differs from other states where folks don't take election integrity as seriously as we do. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that we do to protect our elections. I want to make sure to empower you all with that information because there's a lot of BS that swirls around this time of year. Sometimes you'll hear a story about something going wrong in another state and you'll think maybe that's happening here too. So I want you to know how we differ from other states and why you can go to bed on election night feeling good about an honest contest in the Buckeye State. And I also want to talk a little bit about issue 1, and I'm going to go through this ballot language a little bit. So let's talk about elections administration. First of all, it's important to recognize that this is a local process. You've got Tony Gallagher back there from the Board of Elections, your Republican Deputy Director at the Board of Elections. The staff at your, give a round of applause for Tony. The staff at the Board of Elections is half Democrats and half Republicans. And so yes, as Republicans, we can lean on and rely on our Republican staffers to make sure the other side is doing the right thing. Generally, they work well together, the D's and the R's of the board, but the Republicans are there to make sure that the D's aren't doing the wrong thing, right? That's why we have this bipartisan system set up the way that we do. We focus a lot on list maintenance. Now, this is the stuff that people's eyes glaze over when you start talking about maintaining accurate voter rolls. This is the important stuff. People don't often make YouTube videos about it or get people excited about it, but taking dead people off the voter rolls is vital. We do it every month. It's called the Steve file. We send a file to the Board of Elections every month. We say, these people are dead, take them off the voter rolls. Now, I had the chance to test this recently. I've had 2 loved ones in my family pass away this year, and so I ran a little test. 3 weeks after they were both laid to rest, I went on the voter registration system and checked to see if they were still in there, and guess what? Good job to the boards of elections. Both of them had been removed from the voter rolls within 3 weeks, and so the system works as it relates to that. Carol Lee was asking me about how we also work with the Social Security Administration to identify people that pass away if they die out of state, is really what that's for. And so we take dead people off the voter rolls. We also have this very clear statement in Ohio that American elections are only for American citizens. I think that's pretty straightforward, right? Now, I was in D.C. last week testifying in favor of the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is the bill that President Trump and Speaker Johnson introduced down at Mar-a-Lago a couple months ago, saying that we should have citizenship checks on the front end, and instead of making it hard, the federal government should help us identify non-citizens on the voter rolls. Right now, they're no help at all. In fact, we have to work around them because they won't work with us to identify non-citizens on the voter rolls. I unfortunately have to report to you that just minutes ago, that vote failed. It was on the House floor this evening. Now, your Congressman, Max Miller, and all the Republicans in the Ohio delegation voted for it, but a couple Republicans flipped and voted against it because it was tied to the continuing resolution for government funding, and so it became part of a bigger conversation. Suffice it to say, the SAVE Act is a very important piece of legislation. It probably won't get done this year because every time it's sent over to the U.S. Senate, Sherrod Brown and his buddies kill it. But once Donald Trump is in the White House and once we've held the majority and taken back the majority in the Senate, we need to get that thing done so that we can do a better job. But here's how we work around it right now. We use our verification through the BMV data. In Ohio, to get a driver's license, you have to prove your status, citizen or non-citizen. Most of us don't remember this because it was a few years ago, but when you were 16 or 17 years old and your mom and dad drove you to the driver's license office to get your first driver's license, you had to bring a birth certificate, right? And so when you come to Ohio, if you don't have a driver's license, you have to prove your status. Of course, if you're a non-citizen, you can get a driver's license if you're here legally on a student visa or work visa or whatever else, but it is very clearly a non-citizen driver's license, right? So we use that to remove non-citizens when they become registered. We've also tried to work with the federal government, but this guy named Alejandro Mayorkas, who runs the Department of Homeland Security, is absolutely no help. I'm actually I'm trying to work with the Attorney General to bring a lawsuit against him because there are 3 databases that say who's a citizen and who's not, and guess what? He won't let me access them, even though the law says that he should. I'm working with the America First Policy Institute on this. So despite the roadblocks from the federal government, we have been able to identify 600 this year alone. The left says there's no such thing as non-citizens registered to vote. This year alone, I have found 600 of them, 597 exactly. And what did I do? I removed them from the voter rolls. But that's not enough. We removed them from the voter rolls, but guess what else we did? We referred them for prosecution. Because when a law is not followed, it's a suggestion. In Ohio, it's not a suggestion, it is a law that you may not register to vote unless you're a United States citizen. And so we've been trying to push the county prosecutors to actually process these cases and to go after them where the evidence leads and to make sure that when a crime has been committed that they actually work to secure a prosecution. And that's not easy. So I'm not throwing the prosecutors under the bus, but they definitely should be pursuing election law violations. We didn't stop with that. We're continuing to evaluate on a weekly basis new registrations to check their citizenship status, and when somebody tries to register to vote as a non-citizen, we will catch them and we will remove them from the voter rolls and we will refer them for prosecution. This year alone, I told you we had 600. When liberals hear me talk about this, they say, well, it's not a problem, it's such a small number. Well, that's not true either, right? Every year we have dozens of elections, at least 24 every year that come down to small numbers or a single vote. In fact, just last year down in Stark County, there was a coin flip to determine who the mayor was of a city. Tony's seen this. Elections come down to very small numbers, so don't tell me that having a couple hundred non-citizens on the rolls is a small deal. It's not a small deal, and we don't take it lightly at all. We've also trained our poll workers in Ohio, by the way, to recognize when it says on a driver's license whether you're a citizen or not. That's a new law that Ohio has. And yes, Ohio checks IDs. You think that's a good idea? All right, I do too. We were sued to try to get rid of our photo ID law. The Attorney General and I went to court, we fought like hell, and we defended it, and it was upheld by the court as constitutional because, of course, there's nothing racist about asking somebody for an ID to prove that they are who they say they are, especially when you can get one for free if you can't afford one. And so, yes, we check IDs. And the poll workers are trained to recognize whether that's a citizen or a non-citizen ID card. So that's another security protocol that's in place. Let me talk about having enough Republican poll workers. Folks, in Cuyahoga County, there are a lot of Republicans. Yes, we're outnumbered perhaps, but there are a lot of Republicans. There should be no polling locations without enough Republican poll workers. We need to recruit Republican poll workers. Now, I know maybe some of you have signed up for the program the party runs to be a poll watcher. I'm not downplaying the importance of that. It is part of the ecosystem. Poll watchers are important. But you know what's more powerful than being a poll watcher? Being a poll worker, an election official. It's right there in the name. If you're a poll watcher, you can watch as somebody breaks the law. You can walk outside and you can call the lawyers on the hotline and you can get them to try to do something about it, and maybe a couple hours later they will have intervened and solved the problem. If you are a poll worker, you are trained by your county board of elections. You have taken an oath. It is your job to run the elections in that polling location consistent with Ohio law. being a poll worker, being an election official is much more powerful than being a poll watcher. And we need to have enough Republicans, and yes, you may need to be willing to go work the polls in a neighborhood that's not your own, but we need to have enough Republican poll workers in Cuyahoga County. The place to sign up, of course, the Cuyahoga County website, grab Tony afterwards, or on our website, voteohio.gov. Voteohio.gov, you sign up to be a poll worker, you even get paid for it, but that's not the best reason to do it. I want to talk about issue 1. Jim talked about what a parade of horribles this thing is. Let me talk about the scale of it first. 13,000 word amendment. The liberals that wrote this wrote a 13,000 word amendment, and they want you to amend that into your Ohio Constitution. Does anybody know how long the U.S. Constitution is in total? The entire U.S. Constitution? Anybody know? Exactly. It's 7,500 words. This thing's almost twice as long. Issue 1 is almost twice as long as the entire U.S. Constitution. The team that is passing this thing off wanted us to put a 5 bullet point ballot language together that just made it sound like this really simple, innocuous thing. We said nonsense. We wrote this. We wrote the issue 1 ballot language. It was approved by the Ohio Supreme Court, and it lays out for Ohioans exactly what this thing does. So let's start with the title. And Jim, I don't want to... Jim's still here? Jim had to roll. It doesn't say citizens, not politicians. That's the baloney name that they've given this thing. We gave it the title to create an appointed redistricting commission not elected by or subject to removal by the voters of the state. That is what it actually is. Number 1, it will repeal the constitutional protections against gerrymandering that were approved by 75% of Ohioans in 2015 and 2018. We thought you ought to know that, right? Number 2, establish a new taxpayer-funded commission of appointees who are required to gerrymander the boundaries of the state legislative and congressional districts to favor either of the 2 largest political parties. When we put that in the ballot language, the liberals that wrote this thing, their heads exploded. They said, no, this is anti-gerrymandering. You can't call it gerrymandering. I did something novel. I took out the Oxford English Dictionary and I looked up gerrymander. The definition of gerrymander is to manipulate a political district to achieve a partisan outcome. That is exactly what issue 1 does. It tells the commission you must draw X number of Democrat districts. You must draw X number of Republican districts, and that is more important than anything, including compactness. It's more important than keeping communities of interest together. If this thing passes, you're going to see some of the most grotesque gerrymandering in the history of the country in order to cram square pegs into round holes and try to draw Democrat districts where they really don't work. All right? And by the way, and I'm not the one best positioned to say this, but I think that some people should know this. This is going, if issue 1 passes, it's going to result in racial gerrymandering that is going to diminish minority representation. This is not a guess. This is what happened in the city of Detroit. Detroit for 80 years has had a black member of Congress. Michigan passed this 4 years ago. They don't have a black member of Congress anywhere in the Detroit metro anymore because they start with these districts in the city and they drive all the way out to the suburbs just to create enough Democrat districts to give them the raw numbers they're looking for. It's an ugly thing. All right, on to 3. Require that a majority of the partisan members belong to the 2 largest political parties. Prevent commission members from being removed. You cannot be removed from the Ohio Redistricting Commission. Okay. Number 5. Prohibit citizens from filing lawsuits for any reason other than a few things they tell you to. They basically say you can't sue the Redistricting Commission unless it's for these reasons. Number 6. This goes through the process. You ever heard of the Rube Goldberg devices? Those like fancy things where the boot kicks the thing and it rolls down the deal. This is how they get the members of the commission. It starts with 4 retired judges and it goes through all these processes. It's crazy. Go to 7. This is required the affirmative votes of that many to pass. It creates a ranked choice process to eliminate if they have tied votes. Go to 8. This one's shocking. Number 8, limit the right of Ohio citizens to freely express their opinions to members of the commission. Folks, it says in the amendment you cannot talk to a member of the Ohio Redistricting Commission unless it's in one of their public meetings. You see them at the grocery store? Can't talk to them. Your kids play soccer with their kids? Can't talk to them. If you talk to a member of the Ohio Redistricting Commission and it's not at one of their public meetings, they have to report you. That's in the amendment, guys. They say you cannot contact them in any way unless it's at a public meeting. Pretty crazy, and probably a First Amendment violation. Number 9 requires them to do this in 2025, so you think it's confusing now, you'll have all new districts beginning next year. And then number 10, impose the cost of running this thing, including unlimited amounts of money for litigation. So however much it costs to hire lawyers, they'll spend it. And it's in the Constitution if this thing passes. This thing is a train wreck. Ohioans should know about it. We wrote truthful language that's been upheld by the Ohio Supreme Court so that Ohioans are not fooled about what they're voting on when they vote yes or no on issue 1. So thank you. Yeah. Let me end with this. Over the next, this is where we are in the timeline, 47 days until Election Day. Overseas and military ballots go out Friday. Ballots for our, by the way, who are my fellow veterans in the room? I know we got a few. Wow, look at that. It's showing up tonight. Even got a fellow Green Beret over here. Overseas and military ballots go out on Friday. The voter registration deadline is the 7th of October, so if you're not registered by then, it's too late, or the boards of elections are staying open late that night to make sure everybody can. And then the 8th, early voting starts. So if you requested an absentee ballot, those start coming out on the 8th of October. We will be subjected to a lot of dubious information over the next 45 days. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. I sincerely believe that someday we'll find that some of the folks that are spreading things about elections are actually working for the left. They want to convince conservatives that the elections are rigged so that some of us don't show up. There are things that are happening that are bad and they need to be called out, but don't believe everything that you read. There are a lot of pretty wild ideas out there that I really think are meant to cause conservatives to lose trust in elections and not participate. So just be skeptical. There's a lot of BS on the internet. Remember, it was Abraham Lincoln who said you can't believe everything you see on the internet. All right. With that, thank you so much. I'll take any questions you guys have for me. Yes, sir.
So you're at a party, you have 20 of your friends, and they talk about issue 1. Can you give me 2 simple bullet points that will persuade people that are open-minded to say, stay away, vote no, vote no, vote no?
Power grab by the Democrats. They can't win, and so they want to gerrymander the state to give themselves an advantage. The second thing is who's paying for it. $26 million have already come into the state. 85% of it is from out of state. $6 million is from a Swiss billionaire. Yes, the country of Switzerland, like mountain horns and fondue. Literally $6 million of it from Switzerland. I'm trying to stop him. I've been tied up with a judge right now that's not allowing me to stop him from giving that money. So I've got a federal judge ordering me to cease and desist, essentially, because we were trying to stop this Swiss billionaire's money from coming into Ohio. His name is Hans-Jörg Wyss, this Swiss billionaire. By the way, he's the same guy that funds a fake news operation called Ohio Capital Journal. If you've heard of this thing, it is complete leftist propaganda. The problem is, reputable newspapers like Crane's Cleveland Business and people like Channel 5, WEWS in Cleveland, actually run their stories like they're real news because they're so desperate for content. Ohio Capital Journal is a foreign-funded liberal propaganda operation. Same guy funds that who is trying to fund issue 1. So that tells you who's behind it. Yes, sir. Philip Paisan, I see here, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I get a copy of that? Where is
Yes.
that available?
OhioSOS.gov.
And
you're going to get one in your newspaper because we're required to run it in every newspaper in the state by law, and it's going to be on the wall of your polling location. But you can find it on our website at ohiosos.gov if you just type in issue 1 ballot language.
OhioSOS.gov.
That's us. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Dr. Jerry Bush.
Yeah.
Is it a real thing, or is that, what's going on with all the...
All right, so she raised this, there's this guy that's got a theory that based on what's called a voter ID number. So when you register to vote, we generate a voter ID number. The Board of Elections folks can tell you what I'm talking about. And so like if you're the first one that registered to vote, your ID number is 1 and then number 2, and it just goes sequential. It helps us keep track of who's who and if you move from one county to another so that we don't create a duplicate. most people don't even know there is such a thing as a voter ID number. It's just something that runs in our voter registration system. He has built this theory based on voter ID numbers that he thinks that there's something fishy happening. We have met with him multiple times. We've asked him for evidence, not just theories. Theories are great. We need evidence. He's not produced anything. We have an open door. If he has anything, any shred of evidence that there's something nefarious happening in our elections, I want to hear it. He has yet to produce that. I think it's one of those cases where it's well-intentioned, but he's sort of focused on the wrong thing in my humble opinion.
The guy, what? Foreigner, that what, that works with him? Is that anything to do with
That
it?
kid is his partner from New York.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know that guy.
Okay, well, he lives somewhere, he was in the.
I'm not going to question people's intentions. Some people are well-intended. Others are just trying to make themselves famous so they can start a podcast and sell a book and whatever else. So, we take any kind of report like that seriously, and we ask for evidence, right? We take that stuff seriously. We want him to show us evidence. If he does, I'll put people in jail. Like, and we're not joking about that kind of thing. Yes, ma'am.
My nephew's severely autistic, and in 2020, he got a ballot. This was in Florida. How do they handle that here? He could never have answered that ballot.
So let me talk about ballots for disabled or senior Ohioans, that kind of thing. So the fact is that under Ohio law, someone can be declared incompetent to vote. Takes a judge to do that. Newsflash, no judge is ever going to do that. It's just not going to happen, right? So what that means is even somebody with very advanced Alzheimer's or severe disability or whatever else, you really can't stop them from voting. So how do you make it at least fair? The way we do that, first of all, the families should be involved if they can be, right? That's the best scenario, is that you're helping grandma or grandpa that has Alzheimer's, or you're helping the loved one that is developmentally disabled. The next best alternative is why we have the boards of elections go out to nursing homes and go out to group care facilities, because at least then you've got a Democrat and a Republican election official, again, somebody that took an oath and has to do that job in a straightforward way, and they make sure that at least those people are casting their own ballots with nobody else putting their thumb on the scale. Now, who knows what level of decision making they have? They may be guessing or playing tic-tac-toe, but hopefully they're able to make the best decisions they can with the mental state that they have. But at least if you've got it run by election officials, no nurse or health aide or whatever else is putting their thumb on the scale. That's why the boards of elections go to great lengths to send people out to all the different nursing homes and convalescent care facilities and all of that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, with early voting, mail-in voting, what's to stop someone from stealing somebody's identity and voting in their name, and another person votes on election day, and you're told, I'm sorry, you already voted.
Yeah. So we're talking about somebody committing identity theft. They would have to have your signature or a pretty good match of it, because we do scrutinize those. They'd have to have at least the last four, probably your state driver's license number, name, address, date of birth. Could someone take all that information, request a ballot on your behalf? Possible, right? This is why it's important that you keep track of your own voter registration, that you check it. Go to voteohio.gov or go to the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections website. You'll see if a ballot has been requested in your name, and you can stop that from happening. On election day, if you showed up and they told you you've already voted, again, if somebody has all that information, you should probably be calling your credit card companies too, right? Because you're probably the victim of identity theft. But if somebody did try to cast a ballot on your behalf and then you showed up on election day, you'd probably be required to cast what's called a provisional ballot. And then they would launch an investigation into the circumstances and whatever else. So is it possible for bad people to do bad things? Of course. When there are humans involved, there are possibilities. It's not likely that they get away with it without getting caught. Yes, sir.
3 quick questions.
Yeah.
On the
Lightning round.
Are the nursing homes, is there anything wrong with taking slate cards to the nursing homes?
That's up to the nursing homes.
That's up to them? Okay.
Yes.
The second question, we went.
I did as a candidate, by the way, and I would call the activity director, but it's up to them. Yeah.
We went for 239 years without drop boxes.
Yes.
Can we get rid of them?
I'd like to. I told the state legislature that we should. Some people love them. Right now, it is the law in Ohio that each county has one. Let's talk about ballot harvesting. There was a lawsuit by the League of Women Voters, which is unfortunate that that's become a completely partisan organization anymore. But the League of Women Voters sued me. They got a judge to essentially say, you know, we can allow anybody that wants to return as many ballots as they want as long as they claim that they're on behalf of disabled voters. I've had to put rules in place now, and some of the boards are not happy about this, but it says that you can only use the drop box to return your own ballot. If you are returning ballots on behalf of a disabled voter, you've got to go see the election officials and sign a little form that says that. Not a perfect system, but it's the best way that we have to fight ballot harvesting, and it was in response to this recent lawsuit by the League of Women Voters. We fight ballot harvesting in Ohio because it is illegal and we won't tolerate it. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
We try to live frugally and
Yeah.
everything. Is there any reason why if somebody wants an absentee ballot, they should have the responsibility to request it rather than mailing out to everybody in the state?
Yeah, so in Ohio, we only send ballots to people that request them. To be clear, we were talking in the back, there are other states that mail ballots to people that never requested them. That is a completely foolish idea. In Ohio, we only send you a ballot if you request one.
We get ballots all the time.
You get ballot request forms.
Okay.
You don't get a ballot unless you request one. You may get a form, and those come from parties, candidates. I'm required to send them out, and the reason why the state legislature requires us to do that is because in the bad old days, the big urban counties were sending them out, and the rural counties were not. And so the state stepped in and said, stop the madness, we're going to do it statewide, because that creates a political disadvantage if only the urban counties are doing it and the rural counties are not. That's why we do it statewide now, so there's no excuse. But no, that's just a form. It's just essentially a blank form that you have to fill out if you want to request a ballot. Don's going to give you the hook. Do I have time for one more?
You can do as much as you
All
want.
right.
He's
Yes,
got to
ma'am.
go somewhere else yet tonight.
I got to go to Youngstown tonight.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
TV ads or whatever out regarding the ballot returns that you just explained, where you can only return your ballot?
Yeah, so, we're not running TV ads out on that, but we are notifying people through all the means we have, including signs that are required to be posted on the drop box, right? We prescribed a waterproof sign that the boards of elections will put on there that says you can only return your ballot at the drop box. If you're handling somebody else's ballot for a family member or for a disabled Ohioan, you have to bring it to the election officials.
Are there cameras on those?
24/7, and if you want to watch grass grow or paint dry, or you want to watch the Cuyahoga County drop box, you can do that, and it's available to watch. All the counties have those. It's required. They're emptied every day by a team of bipartisan Democrats and Republicans. Again, drop boxes they're probably more trouble than they're worth, but if there's a state that's figured out how to do it securely, we've sort of found the right mix. But again, if the state legislature decided to get rid of them, it'd be fine with me too. Yes, sir.
You said earlier that you went to a federal judge to stop the $6 million.
Yes.
This seems to me to be only a state of Ohio issue. Why wouldn't you go to a state of Ohio judge to make that ruling? Because it doesn't affect the federal constitution or anything. It doesn't federal government.
So when we worked with the state legislature to pass a bill that says foreigners may not contribute money to issue campaigns in Ohio, right? There was a loophole that they were able to exploit, so we passed a bill closing that loophole. When I started to enforce that law, I was sued in federal court. I didn't choose the venue. I was sued by Mark Elias, who is Hillary Clinton's lawyer, who is a bad dude, who I'm on his frequent flyer program or whatever. Mark Elias sued me in federal court. And the judge said that I couldn't enforce the law because of one little, I would say, technicality in it. And I wish the judge had issued a very narrow ruling, but he basically shut down the whole law. So right now, I can't enforce that law. It is not enforceable based on this judge's order. We are appealing, and we're fighting it to the appellate branch, the next branch of the court, but it moves like a glacier. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, when we interviewed John Houston, when he was running for Secretary of State, we asked him, why can't our voter registration expire like our driver's license? That way, the voter rolls would be purged without controversy, and you just would have to renew your registration like every 4 years or something.
Yeah, it kind of does in Ohio. 6 years is the horizon. If you do not vote for 6 years, it expires, and then we purge you from the voter rolls. I've removed hundreds of thousands of bad registrations. Now, the left says he's purging voters. It's not true. We're purging bad data, right? We're taking bad data out of the voter rolls for people that moved out of state and never canceled, or maybe they're deceased but they didn't die in Ohio if they were at their winter home or whatever, or away somewhere else. And so when we do those every 6 years, or we do it every year, but for those that have been inactive for 6 years, we're removing bad data from the voter rolls. Now, the next step that we'd like to take, and we've asked the legislature to look at this, is coding when there are certain data mismatches and requiring those to be on provisional status, so they have to get fixed before you can sort of keep going forward and keeping those in the rules. So,
Mr. Secretary,
yes.
if I may, well, I did want to give a couple shout outs before, because there are folks here we couldn't introduce before. Brian Sinberg is here on behalf of Judge Sinberg. Our candidates, Donna Walker Brown.
Yeah, one question.
Jack Schrott's here also.
Hey, I've gone on long enough. If you ever have any questions, just don't hesitate to grab me, Frank at ohiosos.gov. Our guy Shay back here works on our team. He's a Cuyahoga County guy. And here's a info sheet. It just goes through some of the security processes that we take. You can empower yourself to reassure your neighbors that we're taking election integrity very seriously in Ohio. Maybe other states are not, but we are. And here's a sheet that goes through that. So God bless everybody. Thank you.
I haven't heard of that. I'll do more research.
I have testified 3 times.
Well, you can change that New York driver's license, which verifies him as a U.S. citizen.
Be a question that I'm not going to hazard.